I am Jane Ring. I am the Parent Support Officer. I am a parent carer myself of a 13-year-old severely sight impaired daughter who's amazing. She's in mainstream school. She's also profoundly deaf. And I go along this journey with you all every day. And she's just really not delighted to be told she's going to be having weekly habilitation at school starting next term. But it is really, really vital for her because she's lost a lot of her skills over lockdown. So you'll hear lots tonight from our panel members about their experiences, both as parents, but also we've got two amazing mentors with us who can share how they get around the world. So just some housekeeping. We are going to keep you all muted because with so many people on the call, it's a lot easier. There's about half the session is the panel sharing their experiences, and then the other half you will get to ask questions. I have given the some of you did send in some questions beforehand, which we hope we'll cover, but if we don't, then please feel free to ask them afterwards. You will have time at the end, and we really like to hear from everyone. There's lots of new people on tonight, which is fantastic. After we are recording this event, this is so that we can put it on our website. So if you don't want to be seen, then you'll feel free to take your camera off, but we do it so that we can share everything afterwards. We're going to have PowerPoints and things, so other people in our community will be able to experience it. Just a reminder to be respectful. I'm sure you all are. I've never ever come across kind of any eruptions in these meetings, but and if anything is shared, please keep it to yourself as well, because that's important. But yeah, I just hope you enjoy it and you get a lot out of what's been said tonight. So we have two brilliant mentors, and the first one who's going to share with us her experience is Michelle, and she's going to introduce herself. But she did tell me she'd struggled to find the mute. So there you go.
I'm here. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Michelle, and I have very limited vision. I used to be able to get around and everything without a cane, but when I was about 15, 16, I had to get a long cane. But I went through mainstream schools and colleges and everything like that, and had really good, even though the schools were mainstream, I was always given one-to-one support in all lessons and classes. At school, the obviously, like I said, we had the VI base there, but it was mainstream. It wasn't until high school that I started doing any independent skills and things, but and that's when mobility really started, because that's when the majority of my sight started to go. So as I said, when I was younger, I used to ride a bike and everything like that. But then when I started going to high school and things like that, that's when I needed to start having mobility training. I started off with a symbol cane, just to make people aware, because like I said, I did start to lose the vision. And then they gave me a guide cane, and then it adventured to a long cane when I was about 16, which I never used to like using. It would always be with me, but it wouldn't come out of my bag because I'd lived where I lived for the whole my whole life, and my thing of not wanting to use a cane was because I felt a bit scared that people would take advantage of me and things like that. So I never used to use a cane, even though I'm totally night blind, because I have RP, nystagmus, and slight photophobia. So obviously being night blind, I actually really needed a long cane, but didn't have the confidence to use it. So when I started using the long cane was when my mum was out and about shopping, and she came home and told me that she'd seen someone out and about with a pink cane, and that's my favourite colour. So I got this pink cane, and also at that time I just applied to go to the RNC in Hereford, and I think that was, I know not everyone's going to go there, but for me, that gave me the confidence to use my cane because everyone was in the same boat as each other. Everyone had a vision impairment, I was totally blind. And also, it just gave me the confidence. Then when I came, well, before I came home from there, I'd heard about guide dogs and tried applying twice for a guide dog, but nothing was successful. And then once I'd come home and I'd moved out with my parents, I was living independent, which I'd had a lot of help from local rehab officers, the sensory impairment team. I would go there once a week and we would do cooking lessons and like independent living skills. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be right now, because it is them and the college and everything that's helped me. And then when I came back from there, like I said, I had the skills to be able to go and live on my own. And not long after that, I applied for a guide dog. And obviously, not everyone, it's not going to be the right thing for everyone, a guide dog, but it's a lot. It's different going from using a guide dog to a cane now, because with a guide dog, you don't really see obstacles and things because the dog's obviously taught to take you around those. But then if I go out and use a cane, it's totally different because, as you parents will know, if your kids are out with a cane, it'll find all the obstacles and everything. And I wouldn't be without her now. So shortly we will have a little video of me working Hope, and basically this video is I'd not long had Hope. I think I'd had her maybe 6 months, if that, and we went down to London. As you all know, it's very busy, and it was the first time that Hope had worked in a really busy area. So I just thought, for those that obviously don't know how, I've never seen a guide dog working, that we'd share a little video. So Jane, if you'd like to share that video now, please.
Yes.
And you'll see this.
No, it's just a road. Oh. Alright.
And obviously my brother had never seen me working with my brother, with Hope, so that's why you had the old mouthy, why? Because he obviously had never seen me working Hope neither, and he thought she was about to walk me into a lamppost. So I think that's it from me. I think I've told you everything about me and how I've got around mobility. I also I do go out on public transport and trains and things, and the way I get around on them is that when I was they started me at school with mobility, so when I was at school, we would start doing mobility, so we do short little bus routes, and I also got taught how to obviously get on the buses safely using my cane, and also encouraged to make sure I was going in the right direction, because when I was younger I used to be very stubborn and I would get on the bus and just think, oh, I'm on the right bus. And that took me a while to learn. I needed to make sure I was actually going the places. And I got thrown in the deep end as well with public transport on the trains and things. But yeah, I get around by asking for help and using the assistance and things that are available. Because it's very rare that I'm at home, and we're usually always out and about. But yeah, I think that's everything I have to say.
Thank you, Michelle. So interesting. So interesting. Someone's just commented on that video. It's really quite amazing to see you and Hope working together. There will be a chance for people to ask Michelle questions at the end, just so you know, because we'll go on to Sania now, and Sania has a different experience as a visually impaired adult and has always been a cane user. Is that right? She's just unmuting.
Hello. Sorry, did you ask me something? I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, you use a long cane, don't you, to get about?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So hi everyone. I hope you're all okay. My name's Sania. I am 26 and I live in Chester. I live on my own. I studied at the university over here. In 2014, I did English literature. So yeah, ever since then, I just decided to stay in Chester, and I currently work as a customer service advisor for the Co-op. It's an apprenticeship at the moment, but I hopefully will be qualifying soon to be a fully qualified customer service advisor. So that's a little bit about me. I am originally from Bradford. That's where I grew up, and I'm from a Pakistani background. So yeah, my experience is quite different. So when I was young, I went to a blind school, primary school. So that's where I started to learn about using the cane, getting around. So I was very used to it from a young age. And then I went to a mainstream primary school because the school for the blind that unfortunately had to close down. But you know, I had a good support system in school. There was a VI unit, so that was really helpful, and I still use my cane in school. In terms of mobility, so I would learn routes sort of around the school to be able to get to classes and things like that. So for me, from a young age up until my teenage years, I didn't really get too much mobility in terms of going out and about, but it was mainly like in school settings. And also I did independent living skills as well. Again, that was in school settings and also at home. So the mobility instructor would come out to the house and do like cooking and things like that, cleaning. And I got independent living skills lessons in school as well. So unfortunately for me, I didn't get the chance to learn mobility outside, like, you know, out and about. I didn't get that chance to have my independence and freedom. I was always told, you know, you're never going to be independent. You're always going to rely on somebody. You're never going to move out. You won't live on your own. You know, you're going to be at home for the rest of your life. So unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to socialize with friends outside of the home. But luckily, all that changed when I was nearly turning 18. So I left home when I was 17 during the second year of my A-levels, and things changed for the better. So I got more mobility outside. I started learning routes in my area, so like to the post office, to the cash machine. I also started to learn independent travel using the trains, which was really good. How to get around the train station, the local train station near me. So that's when all of that started, when I was 17, throughout that second year of doing A-levels. I got a lot of help with learning how to be independent once I moved out. And then I moved to university in September 2014. I lived in uni campus. And again, I got a little bit of mobility around the campus. It wasn't as much as what I wanted, because I think agency or the council that I was with, they didn't have that many staff, and I wasn't getting as intense mobility as I would have liked, but I still did get some mobility to help me get around uni. And then after that, I moved from uni into my own accommodation, into a flat, got some more mobility, but again, I thought, you know, it's not enough. So I then decided to use the My Guide service with guide dogs. And that is basically where they match you with somebody, a volunteer who goes out with you, and you can go on walks, you can learn routes. It's basically all about helping you to be independent outdoors. And it's really nice, it's lovely. I got matched with this guy who was studying also at the University of Chester. So we got along really well. And I actually learned a lot of routes around my area. I'm still living in the same area now. And there's lots of nice cafes, restaurants, there's a post office, there's a Sainsbury's, there's a co-op. So there's lots of nice things in my area what I like. And I'm very independent. I know my way to all of these places now. So I had him for about a year or so, and we did all these routes together. And then I had another My Guide because unfortunately he had to go back to his own hometown. So I got matched with another a lovely lady this time who also lives in Chester. And I just continued to do routes with her because I moved flats. So I moved in 2020. So I'm currently in this lovely flat now. And it's luckily I found a flat in the same area, but it's just further up the road. So I just said to her, you know, I was like, I want to just redo the routes because it's a little bit extra added on. So we did that in no time and it was really good. So I still know the way back to the main street of like all the shops and cafes and things like that. So yeah, I'm very independent, really enjoying it. And yeah, I'm a very avid traveler. I like going on the trains. I have also traveled abroad multiple times on my own. So I have a fiance who lives in the US and we've been together for about 8 years now. He's been over here a few times. He's also blind. And I've been to the US several times. And I remember the first time that I went on my own, it was in 2014. I was very nervous and very scared, sort of found it really daunting. But I made it and yeah, it was amazing. And ever since then, I've been going pretty much every year. I'm going to go this Christmas, which will be really nice for 3 weeks because I've got holidays from work. So I'll be going there again. So yeah, I love going on the trains. I love going on planes. I've done it all. And I'm completely blind. I've got light perception. I can see light and dark, but I've been completely blind since birth. So my eye condition is called Leber's congenital amaurosis. And yeah, that's pretty much, that's all about me and my mobility and independence journey. I'd say that, you know, I'm where I want to be now compared to several years ago, growing up in the Asian community, being told that I'd never be able to do this, you know, not be able to have this freedom and independence that I do now. So the fact that I have it, you know, I'm very lucky. And yeah, life is going really well. So that's my story.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I just have to read you something. So there's a message saying, Michelle, love your confidence with hope. Sonia, love that you're going into a career helping everyone else. But also such inspiring individuals. My daughter lost all her remaining vision a few months ago, so it's a steep learning curve. These stories are incredible and such a boost. So how lovely. So thank you for sharing. And you will get the chance to ask individual questions at the end. So like I said in chat, please, if you want to kind of put them down in case you forget, but just thank you both for sharing your independence journeys. They're brilliant to hear. So now we're going to move on to parents, two fantastic parents who support. They've both got boys that they support to kind of help navigate their world. And also Sarah is very passionate about cane, so she'll tell all about herself, but it's really important, I feel, to hear from the parents and how they kind of what they've learned and what they do to support their children. So Sarah, your turn next.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for that. Okay, firstly, I have never shared my screen on Zoom or done a PowerPoint before this little journey. So if I mess up, everyone just be kind. Okay, right. So hopefully this will work. Okay, so my talk is all about independent movement. And the quote is, your expectations will shape your child's future. Which I think is fairly self-explanatory. So what I want to do is share for you our personal story. This isn't everyone's story, but this is ours. I will tell you about my son in a little while, but I just want to show you this video. Some of you might be feeling this at the moment. Some of you might be at the beginning of your diagnosis. Some of you might be a little bit further along, but I just want to show you this video for a minute.
I'm going to ask everyone to close your eyes for just a moment. Humor me. Close your eyes, everyone. And imagine that you go to open your eyes. Don't open them, please. Imagine that you go to open your eyes, but they don't open. Okay? They just don't open. My eyes were removed when I was an infant from retinoblastoma. I lost the first at 7 months of age, the second at 13 months of age. Effectively, my eyes don't open. The eyes of 40 million blind people worldwide don't open. What are you going to do? Keep your eyes closed. What are you going to do? Eventually, you'll have to do something. Life and livelihood continue to beckon you for your participation. The world continues to turn. Eventually, you're going to have to move. You're going to have to get up out of your chair and go somewhere, do something. So many of you might be thinking, well, I'll just grab onto someone. Sure. How realistic is that? Try to imagine every movement of your existence predicated upon someone else. Someone to direct you. Someone to show you where to go and tell you what to do. Okay? If you grab onto someone, you might just not let go.
And that, I think, when you first get a diagnosis or your child gets a diagnosis, that can be where you think you are. You can think, I'm just not going to be able to let them go. Just to let you know, that was Daniel Kish from World Access for the Blind. We do have links for you, and I will talk about him a little bit more in a moment. Oh, hang on a second, sorry. There we go. But now I'll just tell you a little bit about my family. So I'm mum to Lucas, who is now 19. He's got a condition called septo-optic dysplasia. He has also got retinal aplasia in his right eye and nystagmus. So when he was born, he had no vision at all. And then when he was 3, he developed some light perception. And then by age 8, he developed some colour. And by age 10, some close-up form and movement perception in one eye. But it does fluctuate depending on his mood, depending on his health, depending on whether he's tired. He's also autistic, and he has midline brain abnormalities. He's missing quite a lot of the middle of his brain, which makes any crossover movement or communication from one side of the body to the other quite difficult for him. And he's also medically fragile. So we had the wonderful time of being, what do you call it? Not sheltered, I can't remember the word, during the lockdown. So anyway, we were in for a very long time during lockdown. So that's Lucas anyway. Okay. I want to tell you a bit about our mobility journey. So he was born blind, and we had a qualified teacher for the visually impaired from around 5 months of age, and she was incredible. She was committed. She became almost part of the family. She helped us get what was a statement in the HC plan before he even started nursery. She was wonderful. And if it weren't for her involvement, we wouldn't be where we are now. But we didn't get very much mobility input at all So when he was a year old, we did get some OT for him. And we got physio, but neither the OT nor the physio had ever worked with a blind child before. So they were very much trying to work it out as they went along, trying to work out how to get him to move, trying to work out how to encourage him. And they were very honest about the fact that they didn't really know what they were doing, and they were very keen, but it was quite frustrating. We didn't have a mobility officer at all at this point. We found a specialist nursery, which was 2 hours from the house, and every Friday from when he was maybe 2, we took him down to nursery, which was the Wesk Foundation. It's now changed its name and I can't remember what it's called now because it's brand new. I'm sure Jane will update us later. But so when he was at nursery, he did have a little bit of mobility input. It was quite sporadic and it wasn't a very positive experience. She worked with me, and what she did to me was she put a blindfold on me and she stood me somewhere and didn't tell me where I was and asked me to move around. And that felt to me very much like that Daniel Kish video, like I'm stuck, I'm scared, I don't know where to move. And I found that quite a negative experience. We asked if Lucas could start using a cane when he was walking around, and we were told at the time that he wasn't ready. So he got given a Symbol cane, which, if you haven't seen them, they are short little canes, sort of this long, and you hold them here, and it tells other people that you are visually impaired so that they get out of your way. And Lucas, bless him, tried to use it as a long cane. He was bending over, pushing it along the floor, trying to use it so that he could walk along. And the question is, why wasn't he ready? Why wasn't he given a cane? And there's an analogy with a pencil. If you think of the idea that you wouldn't give a pencil to a child unless they'd learned to read and write, if they couldn't write, you wouldn't give them a pen. They would never learn to write. And that to me is quite powerful. Okay, so this was only our first experience with mobility and orientation, and I know that lots of other people's experience differ. The original mobility in this country was developed because of the blind veterans in the war. So it was a system for people who had newly lost their vision, who had been sighted, and it was a system for adults. It hasn't really changed yet in this country in our experience. So it doesn't really apply to congenitally blind children. And I think this is possibly why we find so much frustration for our children and in our children. And the idea is about guiding and about being taken places and being kept safe. If you imagine you're a passenger in a car or you're being guided by sat-nav, and so you go through the journey and you go from A to B, and then you stop and you think, and you try and think back, where have I been? What was the journey like? You often can't really remember it. And if you don't get to take control of your own mobility, then the same thing happens. You don't learn where you are, you don't learn where you've been, and you don't learn to go there on your own. And sometimes in this country, and in other countries too, it can develop into a dependency conditioning. So our blind children are sometimes taught that they are dependent on other people, and they're not taught how to go any other way. And this was where we were at. Lucas was 3 or 4. We'd been through lots of health issues with him. He's got a heart defect and lots of other things. And we had this Symbol cane that he was pushing along the floor, and it just felt wrong, but we didn't know what to do about it. Then we saw a programme called The Boy Who Sees Without Eyes, which is an Extraordinary People programme. And they are a little bit over dramatic, what have you. But anyway, we watched this program, and it was about this young man who was completely blind, who moved about independently. He used a skateboard, he did other things, and it blew our minds. But what really blew our minds were the people teaching him. There were blind mobility instructors, and they were teaching him to use a cane and to walk completely independently. and to move independently. Brian Bushway here is apparently he's entitled something like the best blind mountain biker in the world or something. But the people from World Access for the Blind, they climb mountains. They travel across the world. They go everywhere on their own. And it just changed what we thought was possible for Lucas. And we wanted that. We wanted that for our boy desperately. So we asked them to come and work with Lucas. They were coming to the UK anyway. Lucas was 4, I think, at this point. So they were coming anyway, and we asked them to come and work with Lucas. And the biggest thing they taught us, firstly, they gave us the courage to put the cane that we'd bought him after we didn't like the cymbal cane, and then we were dissuaded from letting him use. They persuaded us to put it back in his hand again. So that's the first thing we did. And the second thing they taught us was about something called self-directed discovery. And it's all about, you learn through what you do, especially if you're a child, you learn through exploring, you learn through moving. And that was just something very different. We were so used to things being brought to him, the world being brought to Lucas. And suddenly the idea was, no, Lucas, you've got to go and find the world on your own. And it wasn't always easy. It wasn't easy at all. So we had this cane, and he would walk holding the cane, pushing it along the floor. But he held our hands really tightly, bless him, really tightly. And suddenly I was told, look, you've got to let go of his hand. You're not doing him any favours. So I've got this gorgeous little boy, and I love him, obviously, truly, madly, deeply. And we're walking along beside a lake, and I'm told just to let go of his hand, and he can't see anything. And he's using his cane, and with instruction from World Access and with learning where he was going by making mistakes, he managed to walk completely on his own. And I've got my hands in my pockets, clenching my pocket linings, just so desperate to reach out and grab him and hold him and save him. And I didn't. And he didn't need saving. He didn't need me there except to be his mum. He didn't need me as his guide. And we went from a boy who trailed the walls, shuffled his feet and held hands everywhere he went, to a boy that suddenly had this cane in his hand, who wanted to explore. Suddenly he wants to explore climbing. He wants to go and look at a tree. He wants to go on a climbing frame. And he was learning so much about the world just through this thing called self-directed discovery. So it was just incredible, really. Sorry, I'm just seeing if there's anything if I wanted to. Oh yeah, just to say, he was quite scared, and he did cry, and he did stop, and he did do 4-year-old, 5-year-old boy things, and it was really difficult. But it was absolutely the right thing to do. And since then, he hasn't needed to hold our hands unless he's wanted to. And to me, that's a really big, I mean, he won't do it now. He's 19, he wouldn't hold my hand for love or money, but he doesn't need to hold your hand when he walks along with you. And that just is, you know, his normal. He went off to a mainstream school, moved about school completely independently using his cane. And it changed our worlds. And it really was, it was the cane and it was self-directed discovery. He also learned another little trick, which you may or may not have heard of, called echolocation. Lots of blind people use passive echolocation, which is listening to the echoes in your environment to mentally map what's happening. Lucas was taught to use active echolocation. He was taught to make a click with his tongue, which would help him create a picture about his world. So this was him learning with me, and I'll just show you a little bit of this. And then try the other one. Which one's the big ball? Good boy. Go for it. And then try the other thing. Which is the hard thing, Lucas?
Oh, there's snow right there. And then
he learnt a trick, and it was a really good trick. And lots of blind people do it to some extent. If you want to learn more about echolocation, it's not easy to get in this country. There are more and more people being trained, and definitely ask your mobility officer if you think it's a way that your blind child might want to learn to help navigate. It's a nice trick and it helps. It's a tool with the cane, with the self-directed discovery, with the learning to move about your environment yourself. Okay, so now we're moving to, oh, it's gone to that video again. Sorry, it did this last time. So moving on, this is Lucas now, and he's 19. And we thought, what would be helpful? We're saying these canes are brilliant. We're saying give your kid a cane, let your kid have a cane. And we thought, okay, so you buy this cane, or you get this cane, or you get given this cane. Is it hard? How do I know what to do with it? How do I know that my child is using it in the right way? And the first thing we wanted to say is really it isn't rocket science. It's a big stick in your hand that stops you bumping into things and gives you information about your world. It's down to you to use it and to learn to use it properly. But Lucas and I had a little wander around our local bit, and we decided everything or a few things that we thought might give you and your child confidence with using their cane. So these are only our suggestions. We're not mobility officers. So, you know, take them as just suggestions. And all of these will be available, I think, Jane, if people want the photographs afterwards. Yeah,
Yep,
brilliant.
definitely.
Thank you. So, there we go. So this is a thing called a crowded space hold. With a cane, we recommend, or World Access for the Blind recommend, and the National Federation of the Blind, and lots of other countries and blind organisations run by blind people rather than for blind people recommend a very different length of cane to the one that is traditionally offered here. Here, people would recommend a sternum length cane. But the advice that we got was have a cane that reaches up to you between, when it's stood upright, from your chin and your nose, somewhere about here. The idea being that a child moves fast, a child needs to move fast, and they need to have the awareness of what's happening in front of them. The other idea is apparently there have been lots of scientific tests done, which is to do with where our eyes scan the ground and how far ahead of us our eyes scan. And a cane of this length reaches to the same length or the same place that our eyes would reach if they were scanning. So the cane scans where our eyes would scan. So you've got this really long cane, and people do get out the way, but you end up in crowded spaces. And the idea is, how do you not get your cane broken? How do you not trip over people? How do you make it work? So this is the crowded space hold. Lucas used to call it a classroom hold. So you just hold it in the crook of your arm. You can shorten it as much as you like. You hold it gently down by your arm and hold it in the crook, and you can still move it side to side, and you can still feel where you're going. This is brilliant for a cue as well, because you can feel the feet in front of you really, really carefully as they're moving forward, the feet of the person in front of you. But this is a way to make your cane under control in a crowded space. The next thing is curbs. Curbs can be scary, really, and they're different heights, and they can feel really big if you don't know what's down there. So this is the way Lucas does curbs. So you stop on the edge of the curb, and you stop and you listen, and you hold your cane. Then what you do is you put your cane down on the ground, and then you know how far down the curb is. Then you put your foot down, you bring your other foot down, you move your cane, so you're about to walk, and then you walk safely across. So that one's fairly self-explanatory. Steps can be tricky because sometimes they've got overlips, they've got overhangs. Sometimes the step at one side is a different height to the other when you go over. The drop can be different. So use your cane as a perceptive tool. Use it to discover about your world. So you just put your cane, just hip on, and then you can step up or not, depending, and then you put your cane over the lip, and then you can step over. So again, it's really simple. Shorelining is something that blind people are taught, and it's about finding the edges of the path and then sweeping your cane side to side. Stairs, Lucas holds his cane upright on the stairs, so he holds it like this, and then he puts it on the step down in front of him and steps down. When you get fast, you can do 2 steps. So you know, you go down a step, step down. And so that's how you do steps. So I used to run a charity. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about mobility. I always have been since I saw that video when Lucas was 5, and since his world changed and since his future changed. And so my husband and I set up a charity called Common Sense, which isn't sadly running much at the moment. I've got health needs and I've got 2 children with quite significant needs now. But what we did was we set up a children's long cane bank. So we loaned out canes to children across the UK who weren't being given canes when their parents were asking. The other thing we did was we developed something called Rules of the Road, which were basic hints and tips for parents and kids to help them use the canes that we sent them. So these are, again, I'm going to say this, these are guidelines. These are just our suggestions, and I'm not a mobility officer, but the idea is trust. Let your child take control. Let the child trust themselves with their cane. Once they realise how independent they can be with the cane and how much more freedom it gives them, they'll never want to be without it. And then we've put, you know how to do this. You just need some support. Lucas would never dream of leaving the house without his cane. If there's a photograph of Lucas stood outside the house without his cane, it looks wrong. It's like a dance when you watch him using his cane. It's a perceptual tool and it's beautiful. And the thing is for the parent as well is trust yourself. It's your job to keep your child safe and also to give your child the best future. If you believe that your child can be independent, then so will they. And then I've just got my disclaimer, which is just that we're sharing experiences and hopes. We're informing others, empowering parents and carers. Obviously, your experiences will be different and the decisions will be up to you and your child. But this was my story and Lucas's story. And we will share the rules of the road and the slide photographs afterwards. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Sarah. That was so packed full of information and passion and just brilliant. So thank you. So we have the lovely Ellen next to share her experience as a parent, and then it will be over to you guys. So yeah, thank you. Honestly, you guys have put so much work into this. So we look forward to hearing from you now, Ellen.
Hello everyone, good evening. Let me just share my screen. Sarah is doing this for the first time and is already better than me at it. So, you know, here we go. Hopefully that's working now. And can you hear me, everybody? Because I got complaints. I was quiet before, but hopefully I can be louder now.
Yeah, really good. Much better.
Great, you can hear me. That's brilliant. Okay, so hello, it's lovely to be talking to you. I am really excited and a little bit nervous about talking about this evening, partly because, like Sarah, I really believe passionately in it, but I don't want to sound like I'm telling anyone what to do with their child. This, again, is just my experience. I've got one child. All I've got is my experience with him, and he's the one that's taught me everything I know so far. That and a few books and all the rest of it. When you get interested in something, you go into it, don't you? But also a little bit nervous because this area can be a tiny bit of a minefield, it turns out, and there's some quite different opinions. So again, this is what's worked for us. Your child is different to Theo. I'm really hoping you can get some tips though, some ideas from this presentation that you can take and apply and change to fit your situation and your child and where they're at. And hopefully you'll see that's a bit of a theme. So in terms of where Theo seems to have always wanted to go with his mobility, his aim, I think from the minute he could crawl, has been to be able to move about confidently, competently and independently and go where he wants to go. And I haven't had a lot of choice about that being what we do because that's what he's decided to do. So hang on, let me just make sure it goes forward. So let me introduce Theo. He was born with Leber's congenital amaurosis, just like Sania. He had no vision at all when he was born. He then developed a bit of colour and some form vision. You often see delayed visual maturation. But then by age 5, that had degenerated to light perception only, and that's what he has now, light perception. However, as I said, moving and exploring has always been really, really important to Theo. He's what we see here is little baby Theo taking some of his very first steps at age 11 and a half months or so. and he just carried on moving. He explored his world by moving, by touching, by listening, by climbing, by getting into things. So another child might have looked around. He decided if he was going to find out about his world, he had to get out there and touch it. And that's what he did. So I did not get to sit down very often. We did a lot of verbal description to help him to find out about his world. We did a lot of modeling, and we did a lot of moving, as I've just said. And he's really set the tone for his mobility and what he wants to do, but I've also tried to support that. And there've been times when it's been challenging for him, and we've come up with difficulties, and we've tried to find ways around those. A couple of things I wanted to draw your attention to. He's 11 months and he's walking along, but he's using a mobility aid. It just turns out to be a mobility aid that lots of 11-month-olds quite like, which is a push, a walker. And that's the thing. It's whatever works for your child, and it's about giving them the tools that work for them at the time that they need them. You can see in the picture with the Christmas tree that I've put a sort of foam bumper on the stone hearthstone. And so I'm trying to look out for him in an age appropriate way there. I don't want him to fall over and hit his head and crack it open on the side of the hearthstone. I've got the same hearthstone next to me now, and there's no foam bumper anymore. And that's an example, I suppose, of the age appropriateness of things. He does not need that anymore. He can navigate perfectly comfortably around that without needing it to be protective. The thing that's behind him, that oval foam thing, is another really nice example of how we can create a safe space for a child to move around in and to get confidence from. And that was something we were loaned by the sensory service. And that space in there, he used to sit in there, he had toys in there that were fun. And then I put some toys outside. So he had to reach over the side and grab them. And that safe little space in the room was somewhere he could explore the room from and go back to. And it just gave him that safe location to come and go from, and then he moved on from there. And he moved on to doing things at different ages and stages that seemed right for him. So and in the picture where he's running down the road, I'm thinking, okay, have I got the first aid kit? Because he's going to fall over, he's going to graze his knee. But actually he's 7 and he should be allowed to run down the road if that's what he wants to do. It's not a road, it's safe for his age and stage. That's what I'm thinking. It's a footpath. And there's no cars, and there's very few people. And if he wants to run, he's got his cane, off he goes. And then the third one where he's about 13, and by then a granite mountain is a safe space for him. He's got bare feet so that he can feel the terrain. He can feel the gradient through his feet. His cane is far out the front of him, so he's getting some really good information up ahead. And I'm there on the mountain with him, but he's navigating it completely on his own. So our history was that we had some input on early movement from our UK VI service occasionally. And then they did things like loan us that fantastic foam oval. So there's some great things that they did to start with. We did get formal mobility input about age 3.5. We were living in Belgium at the time. That moved to about fortnightly age 5. And we also had a few, 2 or 3 sessions with a wonderful blind gentleman who had gone blind at the age of 19 and taught himself echolocation and in independent mobility from the World Access for the Blind. He came to see us because he lived just down the road, and he showed Theo how he used echolocation, and that opened that little world to Theo too. The provision in Belgium was super, but it wasn't quite the same when we came back to the UK. And it wasn't that we didn't get the input, because we did get weekly input, but it turned out that the mobility instructor did not share the same goals that we had, that Theo had for his independence. Her focus was on hazards. It was on rigid routes. I think alarm bells went off when she suggested that for a school trip, when Theo was using a long cane, that maybe he'd take a cymbal cane so other people didn't trip over his cane on the school trip. And I began to think, okay, but how is he going to navigate in that new space without his cane? That works for him. Anyway, after a long process, many years with the local authority, us and other families got a kind of personal budget for mobility. So now we shape the mobility provision that he has. He is an independent traveller at his secondary school. He's 14. He's really passionate about being an independent traveller, and he's fought for that. In his primary schools, particularly in year 6, he was so cross that he had the TAs with him all the time. For him, being an independent traveller at school is about self-esteem. It's about his social development, and it's about his personal identity, and it's really important to him. Of course, independence means something different at every age, and I'm going to learn a whole lot more as the years go by, I know. This is just a quick rundown of what our current provision is. You probably don't need to see that. I guess I would just flag up that we do also get some specialist sports support, because I think that sport, and sport from somebody who understands how that can be accessed really positively by a blind child, is a really, really key part of mobility. I tried to just pull together a few tips that have been helpful to us. So Sarah's already talked about attitude, being positive about being out there in the world as a blind person, and our mentors have illustrated this really, really well. I don't need to talk about that anymore. Just as a parent, to try to remember that if we have high expectations for our children, that gives them the it gives them the framework to have high expectations of themselves. And I think even if we wonder how on earth will this work for my child, it's our job to deal with those worries somewhere else, and to find out some answers. Because I remember having a blind baby in my arms and thinking, how will he ever walk? And he's proved me wrong every step of the way. So a little bit of practical stuff, spatial awareness. You can start just with your child's body, what's left, what's right, what's a quarter turn, what's a half turn. All those things will help them along their journey of being independent travelers. I would start young, I would explore everywhere, and I would be led by what your child is interested in. Theo was really interested in door handles. We did a lot of rattling door handles around the place, but you know what? It was a really good motivation for walking around a space and exploring it. I'd get a cane in their hands early. I don't think we got a cane in Theo's hands early enough, but he did get his first cane from Sarah's charity. So thank you very much, Sarah. And you know, after that, he was away. He probably had one in his hand about age 5, I would say. I think in terms of mobility, we should think about it in terms of environmental awareness. So we can't navigate a world that we don't understand. We have to have knowledge of it to make good movement and travel decisions. And I've split that world into the physical world, junctions, how houses are set out. There are terraces, there are, you know, pavements are all different. You've got, some pavements have got a verge randomly between the pavement and the road, you know, all these different ways that the physical world is set out. You need to understand that to navigate it. And there's a social world. How do people behave around you? Suddenly they stop. Station concourses. There's these people that just stand there. They don't move. They're watching the overhead screens, aren't they? But they're not going to get out your way. They can't see you. So you learn about how people are moving in the social world, and you learn about the physical world. The way you can learn about that is just by taking your child out in the world and noticing these things together. We've talked a lot about letting go. And I completely agree. We need to let go. We need to do it at the right time, in the right place. I think it's about being age appropriate. That's a question I ask myself. How age appropriate are we at this point? That helps. And also I take an approach of scaffolding, because I want it to be positive. I want it to be manageable and successful when I let go. So an example might be posts. You know, you're walking down a pavement and there are these posts. There's always posts, lamp posts, whatever. At the age of 1, Theo's probably in a pram. He's not going to crash into the lamppost. At the age of 3, he was using a pre-cane, which was a kind of roller thing, which actually covered the whole of his front, so he couldn't actually crash into the post with his head anyway. By the age of sort of 4 or 5, he had a cane. But if he was about to crash into the post, I might yell stop or scan, or I might run in front and put my hand on the post so he hit my hand and not the metal. At the age of 14, he can walk into the post because I've taught him how to do it, so the mobility instructors, and if he's not scanning, it's his own fault. And you're going to see a video of him walking into a concrete bench later, which always makes me wince. Think of mobility skills like freedom skills. If you just make them another lesson in the week, then that can be boring. I think dedicated time's important, but I would be saying you're learning freedom skills. You're not just going to your mobility lesson. Independent mobility means different things at different ages and stages, and I think that's really important to hold on to as a parent. They don't have to do it all at once. And then the last thing is they don't have to do it all on their own. It's not only up to your child. And so particularly in school, I would say try to get some training and awareness for staff and for students in there, because that creates a supportive environment for them to be an independent cane user. So this is Theo beginning to explore the world. He's beginning to venture out of his little safe foamy space. This is when he, he hasn't learned to walk yet. His hands are being held. I think that's age appropriate. But by the time he's 4, it's not age appropriate particularly. He wants to walk to the beach on this footpath with his cane without holding my hand, and that's what he's doing. I would say another tip is to find ways for your child to move freely. So we've just got some rag rugs all laid out on a grassy meadow, and he is running along the rag rugs because he can feel that path with his feet. He knows he's on the right straight path. You can also set up running lines just to be able to have that free movement, not holding on to anyone. And yes, he's 3 years old and he's climbing up a little rickety step ladder to get himself an apple from an apple tree. And I'm kind of a bit nervous, and I'll probably help him right at the top to reach for an apple, but that bit he can do himself. And then he becomes a child who knows that, yeah, he can do that stuff. Why have I included a path through a churchyard to my presentation? It's because I think every family with a blind child needs one of these kind of paths in their lives. This is a lovely, safe path. It's got grass on either side. It's fairly narrow. You can scan along it with a cane. Your child can walk up and down this path totally safely, and they can just get that confidence, independence, and experiment. And then we've also got a little picture of him walking along with his buddy dog, Penny. This was before buddy dogs changed their rules and regulations and how they did it. And they encouraged the children to walk along with their dogs. And this is a footpath, and it's just to really remind you that sometimes Theo's got his cane there. So she's not guiding him, she's walking with him. But sometimes having a dog there, particularly in busy spaces, can be really helpful. So he really enjoys walking along with his dog. So I guess one of my big key messages from my learning is that mobility is the navigation of the physical and social environment. It's not just learning to go from a pre-learned A to B to C, because the world isn't like that. So now let me stop wittering and show you a video of Theo walking along. He is walking with a slightly older Daniel Kish than in Sarah's video. This was in the summer. Theo's been working with Daniel for many years now. They, at Theo's request, have been dropped in a town that they don't know well. They haven't learnt any routes in this town. They've been dropped in a place that they don't know, and they're going on a kind of scavenger hunt to find various things on a list. And one of the things is the sound of a beepy crossing, which you might see him trying to catch later. The idea is he's learning skills for independence. This mobility instructor is completely blind, and they are working together. They are making their own decisions. So let me play it. The sound is quite quiet because I'm not allowed to walk very close to them because I get in trouble when I do that. So let me just...
So okay, all right. So we have to find where the crossing.
Okay, how many of you thought he was going to walk into that wall? He didn't walk into the wall, and he didn't touch the wall with his cane. How did he do that? I think he sensed the mass. There's something called sensing mass. He didn't click. He may have used some echolocation, but we can really sense a big mass in front of us. And it's that, I'm sure you've often seen your child walk up to something big and you think, they're going to hit it. They don't. There is a skill called sensing mass, and it's a sense we have we don't really realize. So what Daniel's done is he stopped and he said, "What's this, Theo? You saw Daniel sneak across and notice the paving, the crossing. He found that." And then he said to Theo, "What's this?" "Blistered paving," says Theo. "Oh yes, they found that with their feet." And then Daniel says, "Well, if there's blistered paving, there's going to be a button, isn't there? Let's find it." So all the time, he is problem solving.
See if we can find the button. Here's the button. I need to record. Oh, right. Okay. Oh, computer.
Okay, I'm skipping past the bit where he sets up his phone to record the sound of the BP crossing for his scavenger hunt, because that's a bit boring.
Earlier, it should be.
Food's got spinning island.
It's after you found the crossing. Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if you noticed Daniel clicking as he went across the road. He was clicking to find out what's on the other side of this road. What am I walking my student into? He's finding out about his wider environment, and that's one of the advantages of echolocation. Okay, now we're going to get to a real challenge. This is a real mobility challenge. It's pouring with rain. I know we're running quite late, so I'm not going to go too long. I just want to show people this because it's quite interesting to see how they manage. It's pouring with rain. There's traffic noise. There's a construction site. There's actually a massive screen set up at the side with sports kind of blaring out of it at one point. There's a shared space, massive open pavement. And there's me thinking, oh my God. But these guys have their environmental awareness and they have all the tools that they need to manage this environment. We will also see Theo walk into a concrete bench as promised. And we will see him manage not to walk into the next concrete bench. And this is hopefully a bit of learning in action. So I'm just going to show you this. They do have a mission. They do have a motivation. And I think that's really important to remember. They're going to get to a hotel where they're going to get a warm drink. I'm going to leave the sound on at the beginning so you can hear the environment, because it's really important to understand how kind of overwhelming that can feel sometimes. But then I'm going to turn it off because it's really noisy with the rain. Okay, how did Theo know to turn right there? Because that's the hotel he wants to get to. He knew because he clicked and he heard the sound of that overhanging area in front of the hotel, and it made a big echo, a big sound that's really specific, and he's been to this hotel before. So he used that to know when to turn. And then they get in and they go along. I just want you to watch Daniel when he goes in under here and how he just moves in the center of the space. He doesn't go to the walls. He uses the space in the middle like a sighted person would walk along, which is much more natural and it's much more efficient. And he does propose that we do that. They get there and the door's locked. Can you believe it? And I love Daniel's response, which is, okay, that's fine. Now, how do we get around this? Because that's the world. They go round and it's fine. They find one. Don't worry. It works out. We've talked about motivation. I'm going to skip past this. It's just, he's coming out of the village shop. The motivation was buying chocolate. That's always a good motivation. Chasing chickens, climbing trees. We will send you these slides. This is just a list of the navigation tools that our children do have out there in the world with them. They are not there on their own. They have all these different things. The other thing I just want to quickly show you is tactile maps, because that hasn't been covered by anyone else, and Theo finds them really useful. They help him to learn about a place and a space and not just a route. So I'm just going to show you a little clip of him using one. It's literally a few seconds.
So there are crossings on every road.
There are.
So you can't have to wait to go up and down.
The cars will have to wait, yes. When
There we go. Okay. So this was his mobility instructor in Belgium, teaching him about four-way crossings, and they could do the theory with cars, with you know, the lights and buildings and where they might be, all before they went into the environment. So if your child is anxious about things, you can do some work before you even go out into the space. Some examples of maps. I've made them of schools, Theo's school, so he would know different ways to go around the school campus, of rooms like the art room where he wanted to be independent, be able to go and find the sink. I'm going to skip over echolocation because Sarah's done it brilliantly. There's new technologies coming. There's some great apps on smartphones that we will give you a list of that can be used. Theo was using Soundscape to help him navigate around Newmarket and find shops that he'd never been to before. And that's just a little thing to remind you about the awareness sessions in school. And I'm going to send you this list of what I had known, wish I had known, but I'm just going to finish with how I wish I'd known how many independent blind adults have a huge amount to teach our children about moving around the world without sight. If you can get your child in touch with role models and other cane users, it's so powerful. And I know that every time Theo walks down the street with a cane using gang, it just builds his confidence and lifts him as that being his way of confidently navigating the world. Thank you for listening, everyone. There he is, off just wandering around the world doing his thing.
Brilliant, Ellen. Thank you so much. And in it was packed full again, really packed full of things. I know that there has been questions before the meeting about how to encourage your child to use a cane. And hopefully there are some tips there. I think now the world is opening up. Any opportunity you guys can take where there are other kind of opportunities for our children to meet up, it definitely makes a difference. I think Theo and my daughter met up in the summer because they did an activities kind of a few days at New College, and they'd met before, so they just said hello before the kind of trip started, and just watching them walking along, Chloe's got a buddy dog as well, with their canes, it was just wonderful, wasn't it? And I've never seen her so confident, actually. That the kind of with their peers is really powerful. So we do have some time for questions. There's a lot that we packed in, which is brilliant. There was one earlier which I will find about, actually it's more general to everybody. Have any of you campaigned successfully to have safe road crossings installed in their local area? Because that can be, you know, we want independence, we want our children to be out, navigate safely, but obviously that's a big issue if the journey independently to school isn't safe. So Sian says that her son currently walks to school with his brother, but there are times when the brother's unwell. So has anyone campaigned? I haven't. In the past, I've done things like put notes through my neighbours all the way along when Chloe was at primary school, when the hedges would grow out and she'd start getting twigs in her eyes and things. I have kind of locally done kind of messaging, but that's very different from crossing roads. Any thoughts? Yeah, go on, Ellen.
We have the way to the village shops. There's two ways in our village to the village shop, and one means that there's no pavement and Theo has to walk out onto the road round a corner and walk on the road for a bit. and there's a different way, which is on the pavement. When he was younger, his mobility instructor taught him the longer route on the pavement. So that's one alternative, is to find a different route round if possible. But when I got Daniel Kish involved, he just said, let's teach Theo the skills to walk on the road safely. And that's what he does. And he does it on his own, and off he goes. So there is always a way, and Theo, your child will be able to cross that crossing safely somehow. And I would maybe push a mobility instructor to give you some help on how can we cross this safely? What is the safe way to do it? Because there is a way.
Brilliant. I think Pearl, yeah, I'll go to you and then Linda, because you were going to jump in, I think.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, just about the safe crossings. And we're just at the beginning of our journey. I've got 2 visually impaired children. My husband is completely blind. My first child coped relatively well with school, and his vision doesn't really impact. He can run, jump, doesn't need any sort of mobility input. But my second child does. And it's a bit frustrating because he doesn't want to use the cane, basically. They are like incentivizing him at school that when he's at home or when he's out with me, he doesn't want to use it. But what I would say, the mobility officer showed him crossing certain roads, which was the narrowest part to get across the road from curb to curb. So that's, but obviously you would need to know the road to know where to cross. So yeah, I found all the information really helpful. I'm in a little bit of a different position just because he has some sight, and yeah, you can use some of his sight, but he can't get his legs up to run. Like he runs in like a guarded way, if you know what I mean, like as if something's just going to suddenly like pop up in front of him. So even my husband wasn't convinced that he needs the cane. And then when my son was saying, no, I don't want to do it, why do I need to do it? And I was like, when I heard the term self-directed, no, what was it?
Self-directed discovery, is that right?
I was trying to say that to the mobility instructor, and I said, will it just be a light bulb moment one day and you'll just think, oh, I need to use it? You know, it'll just be easier if I have it. Whereas he's coping with doing things now his own way. Like he'll like pad with his seat. If he thinks there's a step, he will like feel with his seat, or he'll even like get down and touch the floor. But that's not very often, not in familiar places where he knows, but in places where he doesn't know. And I'm just getting this resistance back at the moment, saying, no, we need to keep doing it. And although they like want to need to compromise, and it's just so hard. It's like, if I say no, I'm being a bad parent. If I say yes, I'm forcing him to do something he doesn't want to do. I don't know.
But I think it's so common, Pearl, honestly. Chloe's got a little bit of vision and she does not particularly like her mobility officer. I think she's lovely, but it's just that what it means, doesn't it? She does go out of the house with her cane every day, but I don't particularly think her skills are amazing. And actually she said to me recently, but Mum, I have to do it with adults and I hate it. I feel so embarrassed because I'm walking along and there's 2 people with me. So yeah, it's persevere, find, like Ellen and Sarah said, the motivation, I guess. Her mobility officer is going to take her for cake, I think, as a way of getting her to do some more training. But she said, oh, it's embarrassing, I have to find a road. So I just think it's very common, Pearl, and hopefully some of it will help. Can you make it change his cane so he finds it more cool?
The thing is, he's only 4.
Yeah.
We were all expecting the level of self-consciousness wouldn't kick in until about 7 or 8.
Yes.
But he's actually already self-conscious. He says, oh, I don't want the other children. The other children might think I'm silly, or And there is also this thing about keeping the other children safe, which I get that, but he needs to explore. So we have an agreement, he doesn't use it in the playground, there's no way. And there was one time they made him use it in a foresty area. And I was like, you know, the cane's gonna be, well, now I don't know, because my husband said there wouldn't be any use. What do other people think in terrains, or would you use a cane? Like I saw Theo using it on the granite hill, so.
Yeah, I can see Ellen and Sarah, you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, you use the cane everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. You change how you use it, but you use it everywhere. And I mean, whether or not you can find him some role models, whether or not, because he can meet up with Lucas, but I think Lucas is maybe a bit old to be a role model, but he needs to find his clan. And he needs to see that canes are cool. He can decorate it. He can hang things off it. He can make it make noises. You can put bells on. You can do things. And you can show him how much faster things are with a cane. So you could do races. You could make him race his brother and realise how much faster he is when he's got his cane in his hand. Anything to try and make the cane cool and to motivate him. And I think about keeping the other children safe. So are they saying that he shouldn't use his cane to keep them safe, or that he should?
No, it's just, I have noticed a few times they is like kept in separate from the children, like he's not lining up with them. And then I did mention it one day, and I haven't seen that so much now. But it's just, you know, when children are going through things, the initial experience is like, what it starts off is going to be their vision for the future. So like, I relate to a lot of things you were saying about Lucas when he was younger. Like, even though he's got mobility input now, it's, I don't know, it's like reactionary or too late or not. I don't, it's just not, like, all the instruction is along concrete. It's along like pavement, and that, to a child, that's probably a third of the, you know, they're going to be on the beach, or they're going to be in the forest, or they're not always going to be walking along the pavement.
You can do it within Pearl. It's not difficult.
I
Go
know,
and explore with the cane.
Yeah, I'm trying. We live our school is in the same street, so he knows that. Look at the back of his hand, and I think with his sight level, if I could get into, it's like how little, how much. It's like my husband didn't use one until he was fully blind, and he probably could have used one when he was visually impaired. But anyway, that's I don't want to keep talking.
Don't worry, but keep going, Pearl. You're doing the right things, and like,
you know, he's a happy child, and he is getting some amazing support. You know, I can't complain. We did the HCP with school camp, you know, we got that. He's got some assistance in school. So yeah,
you're doing a good job, and we will share the things, all the top tips and all the things. Honestly, Ellen and Sarah have put some fantastic documents together. They're PDFs, but we can share them in Word. We can record them if anyone needs it as well. We want to make sure that everyone can access the information that we've kind of produced for this evening. If it's okay, I'm going to go on to Linda, because she's patiently had her hand up. I know you put some comments in the box, Linda.
I just think that Sarah and Ellen, you're amazing. You've inspired me. I felt at a very weird impasse for weeks now, months, and you've just given me solutions that I can apply to my son and his therapist, who are going to hate me in the morning. But it's inspirational what you've done, because what you're saying is not just about completely visually impaired children or blind children, it's about cerebrally impaired as well. And we have to work out, don't we, as parents, and we learn as parents how to figure things out for our children. And sometimes we just stand back and watch them work it out themselves and think, oh my God, why don't teachers, therapists stand back, watch them, think and learn from them and learn from the parents, because the parents are the experts. I say it time and time again, the parents are the experts. You two are just, oh, you're so in my back pocket now of my reference books for things that I'm now going to bombard my therapists with for my son to help him, because they're all at an impasse. I know today it was revolutionary again when they say to me, there's complex, Linda, and then there is Reddington complex, and they do this and sort of, you know, we're still trying to work him out, and we're still trying, and I think, no, you're not trying to work him out, you're still trying to get him to fall into a pathway that you can run with him. You're trying to reach you're trying to reach a connection somewhere, instead of looking at what you're doing and reevaluating it and reapplying it to him, specifically for his diagnosis, because he doesn't fall into the standard sort of, although there's many visual diagnoses, but he doesn't fall into anything that anybody's come across so far. So it's really difficult. And I've kind of ran out of answers for them to guide them along the way. But you've just done it for me, the pair of you. Brilliant. I've got a pathway forward now, and I'm hoping to drag people with me with this. But Jane, when you said about campaigning for a crossing, yes, we are trying to campaign for a crossing that is outside of a deaf and multisensory impairment school. There isn't one, and I've been campaigning directly to my MP, who's now decided that it's well, the school should have thought of that before they built it. No. This is to do with highways. This is to do with backing for highways. This is to do with money, finance. And so now my MP's gone, oh, I wasn't expecting that. So what's happening is there's a whole Labour and Conservative issue now. So my child's been able to be taken out of the school for the first time in 8 months means that somehow Labour and Conservative have got to come to an agreement that we can have a crossing. That's just crazy. That's politics gone mental. And don't worry, I am on that mental. And that's my next challenge. But it goes crazy and goes beyond and above the call of duty for us as parents. But if we don't do it, nobody else will. And Ellen and Sarah, you are just the epitome of that. Thank you. You've inspired me. I'm off on one again. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And also for Sian and the other people that asked, I think if Linda gets somewhere, and you know, that's why we created this network. We want to learn from each other, share experience, support each other, and kind of keep that positivity that we all know that things can be really tough sometimes. But actually we also find solutions, so that's a really positive thing. And I can't tell you how lovely it's been to hear from Sarah and Ellen, but also from the mentors, from Michelle and Sania. It just fills our heart with joy to hear your stories about kind of being out in the world, and it really does. I realised it's 9 o'clock, but has anyone got anything urgent they want to ask? We will send everything on. I'll just check I don't think there's any hands up. I also want to tell you that, so our parent support group meets every 2 weeks. So our next one is a chat. So it's the second week in November, second Tuesday. And there we just kind of kind of just talk about what's happening for us and give each other mutual support. And the next theme session is on education rights, which I'm sure you all have got interest in as well. So that's on November the 23rd. And we'll hear from 2 mentors and 2 parents, one of whom's here tonight, who's got her daughter into RNC, because that's not always easy getting them into specialist provision, and also Laura Hughes, who runs More Vision, who's a parent and who is kind of engrossed in the education world and has got lots of hints and tips. So you are all very welcome. I will send a follow-up email, but it's been so nice to have so many people here today. So I'm just chatting, making sure no one else wants to say anything. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Sonia and Michelle. If you want to stay on, then we can, let's give them a, it was just so brilliant, so brilliant. And if you want to stay on, we can, have a little debrief before everyone goes. But thank you for coming, and stay in touch, because we're very welcoming here if you want to come back to our chats. And I'll make sure you all know about the upcoming theme sessions as well.